Hello everyone, Makeville here for my first module tutorial. I will be doing the module UltraStores as you can see from the title, and
All
you know
available
this
experts,
module is
please
on the
report to
bomb
room A9.
when that plays. Big sound for a big module. This is one of the hardest modules in the game as the time of recording this, and yeah, for good reason. This module is a combination of the modules UltraCube and Simon Stores, both of which have tutorials made by Tim Wee. I do highly suggest you know those modules. The links to those tutorials will be in the description because yeah, if you don't know those modules, learning UltraStores will be an absolute pain and you will not have a fun time. But for those of you who do know those modules, you're certainly welcome, and I do hope that this tutorial helps you understand the module better. Um, so the premise of UltraStores is that you're reading rotations on a 6-dimensional cube, a hexaract, as the module calls it, and using those rotations, you'll perform calculations on parts of the serial number, and using the number that you will get, you will work out a sequence of colors to submit, which you will be able to do once you enter the submission part of the module, which you enter using the middle gray submit button. I will go over that part of the module later. But the most difficult part of the module, or at least when learning it for people, is the reading the rotations. So that's what I will be focusing on in this tutorial. I will also go over the calculations and other parts of the module, of course, but yeah, the rotations are certainly the focus of this module. Now, for those of you who have done the UltraCube, you know that looking at which axes rotate into which ones is often a really good way, and you know that if you have an axis that goes from brown to white, or an edge that goes between these two, and you see that the arrow pointing from brown to white goes into the arrow pointing from white to pink,
Emergency cleared.
then
All
you see that
personnel, please return to your
the
stations.
module rotated from plus z axis to the plus x axis. For those of you who don't quite know what I'm talking about, I would suggest looking at Tim Wee's tutorial. It is incredibly helpful for a module like UltraCube, and will provide a good understanding for the basis of what my UltraStores tutorial will be based off of. Now, for those who do get that, you obviously know that UltraStore doesn't have those edges, and so it's slightly more difficult to draw those arrows. You see that the module does not have edges, and even on the manual, you only have dotted lines. However, the base idea still remains the same. If you see a module in this configuration, and then you see that brown to white, and you see that brown has gone where white is, and white has gone where pink is, then that means that you know that white, which was previously plus x, which was previously plus z, which is what the arrow entailed, you know that white became here and brown became here, then it's plus x. The arrow is pointing rightwards now. So it's focused on where each dot is relative to other dots on the module. And so that's the base of how I read UltraStores rotations. I look at how the dots rotate relative to each other, where they move relative to each other, and from there calculate the rotations. And another neat trick, I'm not sure if this was mentioned in Tim Wee's tutorial, but UltraCube tutorial, but say if you had that rotation, you see that if z plus z axis, like brown to white, rotates into plus x, that is white to pink, then you also know that this module in general is undergoing a clockwise rotation. Brown to white, white to pink, pink would rotate to red, red would rotate to brown. What this means is that say you saw white to pink first, and then you saw white go to where pink is and pink go to red. Then that means that the arrow going plus x from white to pink is now pointing negative z, so pink to red. Then that means that you have plus x minus z instead. Now this obviously is not the zx that we saw. However, these are equivalent. That is, if you have plus x minus z, you can treat it as zx. This is because there's our clockwise rotations, and so in fact in general, if you have plus a minus b rotation, then you actually have plus b plus a, which just refuses to be a rotation. and that is a neat trick. I think it helps speedily read UltraStores tutorial rotations, which is pretty helpful. And so yeah, if you have a positive rotating into a negative, then you can just treat it as the positive of the second one rotating into the positive of the first one. Now, this logic, however, applies. So if you have a negative A, negative B, then you would, since you have the second one is negative, you would move it to the front, plus B, and then make the first one the same as it was, and then minus A. And now this is the form we recognize, so plus A plus B. So in fact, if a negative rotates into a negative axis, then you know that it's actually the positive way, just for both of them. So yeah, I think that's a neat trick for people to apply. And so yeah, focus on where the dots are relative to each other, and see where they end up relative to each other, and from there you can read their rotations. I'm going to apply that to what we have, the module in front of us right now, and try to make that work. So initially, we will look at the plus x axis. I always start with the x. It's the most intuitive one for me, and yeah. Purple, lavender, you see that plus x, and we see that they end up still being plus x to each other. Or yellow, pink, we see that it is the same case. So we know that plus x, the x-axis was not changed, and it was not rotated. And if you want, you can scroll back in the video, or you can look at the new rotation that I'm presenting. It stays true throughout, and in the first rotation, x-axis was not rotated. So then we can move to the w-axis. I kind of just go counterclockwise, x, w, v, z. Now the w-axis can be found between these two dots. So on the module, it would be, waiting for reset, this purple and this purple dot, these two dots. And we see that the purple dots, those purple dots definitely do not stay in the same direction relative to each other. That is, the w-axis was rotated. And we look again, purple to orange, purple to orange. We see that orange, which was previously plus w of the axis, of the purple dot, became negative z of the purple dot. That is, for example, this gray to this green, and this gray moved to where the green is, and the green moved to where this black is. You see this perfectly vertical line. And so you see that the first rotation at least includes plus w to minus z. And of course, using the trick we saw earlier, we can take that as zw. Now you may have noted that I said included. This is because the module may have more than one rotation at the same time, and thus we have to account for that. We have to check all the axes, or as many as we need, to ascertain that we have all the rotations for that stage of the module. Now going into this, we have we already know z and w have been checked, so we need to focus on u, v, and y because x has been eliminated. So we're waiting for a reset here. The u-axis between yellow and gray, for example, so blue and light green in this example, which does not appear to move. We can make sure of that. This green and the cyan dot, they don't move relative to each other. The u-axis stays constant and is not moved, so that will not be part of our rotations. Now we move on to the v-axis, which I can find between this yellow and this white dot. It is almost perfectly vertical. And on the module, it can be this light green and this dark green dot. And we see that the v-axis does not move relative to each other. If we follow any other close to vertical diagonal dot, then you see that it is in fact not moving. Lime to brown, lime to brown. They don't move relative to each other. They stay almost positionally the same. So yeah, the v-axis is also not involved. And lastly, we can check the y-axis. Now the y-axis is nice on Twitch plays, KTANE, because you almost don't see like half of the dots that make up the half of the y-axis, but which means that you can just see which dots go under where, kind of disappear, and check from there how what rotation is what. Now, however, obviously diffuse aside, you could have full view of basically all the 64 dots, but you have a general rule of thumb is that the closest dot from each other is going to be a Y pair. So found this lime and green, this green and red, this red and blue, those are going to be make up a Y pair. And so we can look for that in the first rotation, this pink and gray pair. We see that they don't move. They're still pretty much the closest to each other. And thus we know that the Y does not move either, and that the first rotation for our first stage is just ZW. Moving on to the second rotation, we'll wait for a reset, 1, 2. And so if we look at the x-axis, which we can look at these top two for reset, 1, we look at pink and gray, brown and green, sorry. 1, cyan and brown. We see that they don't move relative to each other. The x-axis stays constant, it is not changed. Moving on to W, which we can find here, we can use cyan and yellow. Oh, no, that was the first rotation, sorry about that. Blue and brown, they don't move relative to each other. And so we know that the W axis was also not changed in the second rotation. For example, 1, so red and purple, they don't move relative to each other, so we don't have to so we don't have to worry about the W axis being part of our rotation. Now we look at the U axis, which we can find between yellow and gray here. Wait for reset. 1, we can do yellow red, and we see that yellow red definitely changes position. It is not the U axis anymore. So we wait for reset, 1, blue purple, and we see that it is the U axis, which was basically 45 degrees, moves into a close to vertical, but not quite but not quite, still diagonal, which is indicative of the V axis. We see that we said purple is positive U of the blue dot, but it moved to be negative V of the blue dot, and so we see that it is plus U minus V. If we look at this again, 1, red orange, it moves to negative V of the orange, so we know it is plus U minus V, which translates to VU. And after that, we still need to check the Z and Y axes. 1, Z, and we see that the Z axis does not move in the second rotation. It does not change relative to the dots that it includes. So the Z axis has not changed. And we actually also know that the Y axis cannot be changed because we've already eliminated X, W, and Z, and Y cannot rotate it on its own or include either V or U. And so we know that the y-axis is not involved either. So we know the second rotation for the first stage of UltraStores is a VU. Obviously, it's not consistent across all stages of UltraStores, but for this UltraStores, the second rotation of the first stage is VU. And so moving on to the third stage, we again look for the x-axis, 1, 2, green and purple, and we see that green and purple, the x-axis does not change yet again. And so we know that X is not involved. So now we move to W, again, gray and green. Waiting for a reset, 1, 2, yellow and lime. And we see that W absolutely changes. And we see that lime, which was plus W of the yellow, moved to minus Z of the yellow. And we can see that again, 1, 2, purple and blue, and we see that blue became negative Z of the purple, which means that we know that it's plus W minus Z, which is going to be ZW again, which means that the part of this actually looks like the first rotation that we had. And so now we know that Z and W are involved and X is not involved, so now we move on to U. So we're waiting for reset, 1, 2, green and orange, they don't move relative to each other. We can find U axis along the red, yellow, and gray. And we can wait for a reset here. 1, 2, green, lime, and okay, sorry, missed that. 1, 2, purple and yellow, they don't move relative to each other. So the U axis is not involved. So now we have the Y and the V axis left. So now we can look at the V axis, which is between white and yellow in this case. Well, in some cases, 1, 2, lime. Okay, I missed that. 1, 2, 1, 2, purple and blue. They don't move. 1, 2, yellow and red. In that case, did not move relative to each other. I'm sorry, I lost track of my dots there actually. But 1, 2, you see that this yellow and blue and purple, blue and purple did not move relative to each other. If you look at other V dots, then you can see that they don't move relative to each other either. 1, 2, orange and purple, you see they don't move relative to each other. And so we see that the v-axis is not involved, and because we know that the module cannot involve that many, cannot involve just the y, we see that y cannot be involved either, and we can check this. 1, 2, 3, the lime and green stayed relative to each other still in y, so 1, 2, purple, pink and brown, yeah, those stay relative to each other the same, so we do not have to worry about the y-axis revolving either, which means that we actually have a really nice first stage with all 3 singles. This will not always be the case. You do sometimes get dual or even triple rotations that occur simultaneously, and you do need to watch out for that. However, since we do have this now, we will go on to the calculations. The serial number, as I mentioned, we do calculations on the serial number. And it is the serial number is VW6KR0. And I know it could be using the NATO alphabet, but I'm lazy. And as Simon Stores, people who know Simon Stores would know, we need to calculate the D value, which is equal to V is the 22nd in the alphabet plus 9 plus 23, W is 23rd in the alphabet plus 9 plus 6 plus K is the 11th plus 9 plus R is 18 plus 9 plus 0. Reason why I added 9 is because it's base 36, so every letter is just their alphabetic position plus 9. And so if we do this calculation, we get 31 plus 32 plus 17 plus 9 plus 9 is 18 plus 18 is 36. Well, so this is equal to 63 plus 53, which is equal to 116. And we can delete all of this. And then we can move on to the actual calculations. Now A0 is going to be, I generally notate my my numbers this way. A0 is equal to 6 times 36 plus K, which is 11 plus 9. We're converting from a 2-digit base 36 to a decimal, so we have to multiply the bigger digit, the left digit, by 36, and then add the right digit. So the 6 times 36 plus 11 plus 9, which is equal to 216 plus 20 is equal to 236, and that's our A0. Now A1 is calculated by applying function ZW to 236, and so we'll find it here. ZW is here, stage 1, so ZWX is equal to 236 plus 236 mod 6 cubed. And so when we apply modulo 6 to 236, we would get 2. If you can check that with a calculator, or you can use the Google calculator. I don't really, I do mental math for a lot of these, or have a calculator at hand as well. Now 2 cubed is 8, and then 236 plus 8 is 244. A2 is calculated by applying VU to 244. VU is equal to NX, or stage 1. Now what N means is the current step of the sequence, which is this number that we have. So right now VUX is going to be 2x, so that means that we have 2 times 244, which is equal to 488. And for those of you who know Simon Stores, you know that we need to subtract 365 from this because it's over 364, which comes out to be 123. And lastly, we find A3 by applying function ZW again, but this time to 123, the output of A2, the VU function. We find ZW again, and which is equal to 123 plus 123 mod 6 cubed. Now 123 mod 6 is going to be 3, and 3. 3 cubed is going to be 27, and 123 plus 27 is equal to 150. 150 is our final number. And again, for those of you who know Simon Stores, you know that we need to convert this number into balanced ternary. What balanced ternary is that ternary, well, in basically is base 3. So it is utilizing powers of these numbers, all of which are powers of 3. 1 is 3 to the 0, 3 is 3 to the first, etc. But in balanced ternary, you can either add or subtract each digit, and from there create all of the numbers that you need. Now, sorry about that. In order to convert 150, which is the number we want to submit, into balanced ternary, my method is to see which number we are closest to. Now we see that 150 is about 70 away from 81 and is about 80 away from 243. But in this case, I see that 243 minus 81 is actually incredibly close to 150. So I actually will do that first because I know that all of these numbers, even if they're added to 81, is not going to make 150. And so just from that, we know it's 243. However, you can also take a more guess and check approach to doing this. It usually doesn't take a terribly long amount of time, but yeah. So we see that we're going to have 243 minus 81, which is going to come out to 162, which is very close to 150. It is only 12 away. So if we want to subtract 12, we can do minus 9 minus 3. And if you plug this into a calculator, 243 minus 81 minus 9 minus 3, we have 150. And so we know that this is going to be the sequence that we want to submit. However, we must write these numbers in ternary form as well as from increasing powers of 3. So 3 to the 0 is 1, and we can see from this sequence here. And so we see that 1 is not used, so we put a 0 there. We see 3 is subtracted, negative 9 is subtracted, negative 27 is not used, 0. 81 is subtracted, so my negative 243 is added, so positive. So this is actually going to be our balanced ternary sequence that we will be using to submit. Stage 1's initial color sequence, you might also recognize it from Simon Stores, is RGB-CMY. But now the rules for changing the colors are a lot more different. And again, in order to change this sequence to be what the module wants, you have to enter the submission area, kind of. It's difficult to give it a name, but you enter it by using the middle button. And so now you will apply all these rules. You will see if any of these rules are true. If they're true, then you apply the condition on the right. Most of these rules are pretty intuitive, but I will explain those that are confusing. And I will be silent for most of this because my throat hurts and I need to take a break. So now first note that I will be making is the blue and yellow are on the same side of the module. This means that they're either both on the left or both on the right side of the module. The top left, top right, top or bottom, none of them are included as sides of the module. In this case, this rule applies because they're both on the right. And so these two rules are some of them are quite new to UltraStores and do need some explanation. This rule states that starting from the white button, the yellow button is further clockwise from the green button. So if we look at the module here, we see that starting from the white button, we hit yellow first, then we hit green going clockwise. Green is further clockwise than yellow in this case, so we see that this rule does not apply. Similar logic for this one. If we start from black, we see that we hit cyan first, then blue. So blue is further clockwise than cyan, which means that this rule does actually apply. Now that we have all the rules that we want to apply, we can apply them, obviously. And we see that we would need to reverse the sequence. And then we cycle each color one space to the left. This means that M is going to go where Y is, C is going to where M is, etc. So in fact, we can backspace Y from here and then put it over here. That shifts everything to the left once. Now, one thing to note is that one rule that is sometimes hard to comprehend. One condition is cycle each color in clockwise order of the colors of the module. Now, obviously, this does not apply here because the rule is not true, but normally what this would mean is that you take for each color that you have here, you find the color that is next clockwise on the module, and you change it to that. So for example, magenta would be changed to green because green is one clockwise from magenta. Cyan is going to change to yellow because you cannot change it with white, so you go to the next color, which is yellow, and etc. So that's what would happen with that rule, but we're not changing anything in this case, so we will not be applying that, etc. Swap blue with the color opposite in sequence, B with G. Swap colors of top and buttons if neither of white and black. So this last rule cannot be applied because this top button is white, and so we cannot switch it with red. Yeah. So now we have our final sequence that we will use to submit for each color. You might know this from UltraStores. If it's black, then we have black active before pressing the color, and if it's positive, then we have white active, etc. How do you know if a color is active? If you see that it is a uniform color, such as when white is here, then you know that it is active. If you see that a color has a lot of the shading still there, then you know that it is not the active one. And if you press it, then you see that this is like a really dark gray. And you press the uniform white, etc. Our first color is cyan, so we want to press black, make sure that's active. Press cyan. And we said the next color is still negative, so we will keep black active. So we press green. Next color is red, still negative, so red. And then next color is positive, so we press white, and then yellow. And so we see that we did not get a strike. We have now moved into the second stage of the module, which uses 4 rotations instead of 3. So we see that these are going to be it's going to be extended by 1. However, the module does change rotations whenever you move on to one stage to another. So that is the reason why you cannot just keep these notes. The only thing that you will still be using from these notes is these numbers here, as well as D from the serial number. And yeah, however, the module does not strike when when the module strikes, you do not get new rotations, so that is a nicer aspect of the module. However, you do need to be careful to change this sequence, because when you press the gray button again, the colors of the buttons will have changed. I am going to take a small break from explaining. There will be a jump cut, and I will come back to you in order to explain stage 2. Hello, I am back, and we are moving on to stage 2 of the module. My main focus of explaining stage 2 and stage 3 is going to be finding a double and a triple rotation, which I can already see we probably already have on the module here, because the first stage we only had single rotations, which is pretty unlikely, and in general it is good to know how to read double and triple rotations. In my opinion, they're not terribly different, it's just that they're much longer to read. And I will refresh the page or to delete all the highlights that I have made. So yeah, we can move on to the second stage, first rotation now. We can start from the x-axis, which we see brown-orange does not move, waiting for a reset. Flesh, yellow, does not move relative to each other, so the x-axis does not, is not rotated in the first rotation. And we now move on to axis W, blue and green, but do not move relative to each other, so we do not, so we're not concerned with that. Now, because the first 2 rotations of stage 2 do appear to be single, I will have you guys simply apply the logic that I have already taught in order to find these 2 rotations, and then once I have done the first 2 rotations, we can move on to the double and triple rotation that are present somewhere between the 3rd and 4th rotations of the second stage. Okay, so in fact, the first rotation, I hope you have determined, is the ZY rotation. We can see this from the Y-axis, the green and yellow, turning into the negative Z-axis, the positive Y going to a negative Z. This purple dot was initially plus Y, and now it's negative Z of the flesh-colored dot. Therefore, this is a ZY rotation because the negative rule, where we have a negative in the second part of the rotation. First rotation is ZY, and now we can look at the second rotation to see to see which axis is rotated where. And one trick I do have for reading like the middle rotations, well actually any rotation that comes after another rotation, is to use these dots: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the brown, white, yellow, gray, green, and gray dots. These 6 dots are often easy to identify at the end of any rotation, even at the start of another, and you should be able to find them with relative ease in order to see where they go. It is important to be able to find these dots quickly because otherwise you will just be looking at a huge group of dots that are running around. And if you already can find these dots very, very easily, then it will make your life a lot easier when you're trying to track dots and where they move relative to each other, since you want to have pairs of dots that you can track. So moving on to the second rotation. So in fact, the second rotation is the XW rotation. We can see that at the end of the first rotation, one gray yellow goes into gray yellow. That is plus X. So gray is plus X of orange, and now it's plus W of orange. So therefore we know this is the XW rotation. Next, we will be going on to the third rotation of the second stage of this UltraStores, which appears to be either a double or a triple. At the end of the second rotation, we have 1, 2, orange and lime, and we see that they move to a diagonal but still almost horizontal, which is going to be indicative of a double rotation. And so we track that again. 1, 2, we see lime is plus X, and now it's plus W of this purple dot, of this rose colored dot, I suppose. 1, 2, brown plus X green, and then it's plus W green. So we know that one of the rotations must have been XW yet again. However, this is not the only rotation going on in the module, I can tell you that right now, but it is almost always good practice to just check all of the rotations on the module and make sure that you're not missing any doubles or triple rotations. 1, 2, we can see that the W-axis yet again rotates into the negative X-axis, which is what we already established. So we will go on to the U-axis in the third rotation. Waiting for a reset. 1, 2, U-axis is green, purple, and we see that this axis does not change very much. The U-axis is not involved, which means that we know this can only be a double because at least one axis is not involved. Therefore, 2 axes have to be not involved, and therefore this can only be a double or a single. Next, we will focus on the V-axis, which is going to be in these 2 positions, 1, 2, lime and brown. And we see that the lime and brown axes go into the Z-axis. So we know it is some combination of VZ, and but we do need to see if they are positive or negative. So we can track that 1, 2, this green and positive of that red. 1, 2, blue is positive of that lime, and then it became negative Z. So we have plus V into negative Z. Feel free to scroll back the video if you did not catch that. I will wait for a reset and try to explain it again with better terms. 1, 2, blue, 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 blue. You have to be really good at finding those 2 colors that you have located at the start of the sequence. Generally, if you just try to kind of see which direction they're going, then you can kind of just see where they end up. But yeah, this another rotation involved, the other rotation actually involved in the third rotation of the second stage is plus v and minus z, which becomes zv. And we already know that the u-axis was not involved, and therefore the y-axis is not going to be involved in the second rotation either. So we are moving on to the fourth rotation. In the fourth rotation in this case is in fact a triple. I can tell you that right now, but it is also good practice to be able to identify all the rotations. We will wait for a reset and start working our way down the list. 1, 2, 3. X-axis is green, purple, which we see move into a vertical position. 1, 2, 3, blue and orange. So we see that 1, 2, purple is plus x of the gray, and then it became plus z of the gray. So the first rotation is going to be xz. Feel free to scroll back the video or find any point at which you can see the third rotation and try to locate those two dots at the top or somewhere. So we already have x and z, and so we will move on to w. In the fourth rotation, we can locate 1, 2, 3, red and cyan. Red and cyan are somewhere over here, which we see as V because it is almost vertical, but still somewhat diagonal. So we can see that the w-axis, or the positive w-axis rotates into the negative v-axis, because if you see here, 1, 2, 3, this yellow and purple, and the yellow and purple. So we see that the purple, which was positive w of the yellow dot, became negative v of the yellow dot. Therefore, we know that this is a plus w minus v, which is going to be a vw rotation. And lastly, we know this is a triple, but at any rate, it's good to check. We need to check for the u and the y dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we can see that the u rotates into the y-axis, but still need to determine whether it's positive or negative, whichever direction. 1, 2, 3. This purple and I'm sorry, I'm getting all my colors confused because yeah. 1, 2, 3, yellow and purple, yellow and purple. So we see that the purple, which was positive u of the yellow dot, became negative y of the dot. So we have positive u goes into negative y, which is going to be the yu axis rotation. And so if you want to check that, you can always see if the positive y-axis rotates into the positive u-axis, but in this case this does apply. We can see 1, 2, 3. The brown and purple usually becomes the y-axis, the u-axis over here becoming 45 degrees, and so it is in fact the yu-axis. I hope that made some sense. I did go over it pretty quickly, but that's because the module also goes pretty quickly. So yeah, these are our rotations for the second stage, and so we will be doing calculations on those. Now, this time, because we have 4 sets of rotations, we have B0, B1, B2, B3, and B4. In fact, I will be tabbing those just to make things more clean. And so now we're going to use B0, which is calculated from these two. So in fact, we need to do 18, because R is 18th in the alphabet, plus 9 times 36 plus 0. Now obviously the plus 0 doesn't do anything, and we know that 18 plus 9 is equal to 27, and if we do that calculation, that comes out to 972. And we know that 972 is over the 365, so we need to subtract 365 until it is less than 364, or less than or equal to. And initially it's 607 when we subtract the first 365, so you subtract again, which becomes 242. So that is our B0 value, and our B1 value, these are single rotations. You kind of know how to do these already, so I will go through them very quickly. But reminder that we need to, because we're on stage 2 right now, we need to use stage 2 functions. This is a common error even among people who have done UltraStores lots of times. And yeah, must remember that. zy is somewhere here, x minus 2, a n minus 1, so 2.2. And so here we start seeing a n minus 1. So we have our n right now is 1 because we're at b1, and a n minus 1 means we're using a0 in this calculation. So we're subtracting 236. This is a key point that you might remember from 7 stores. Good to keep track of for sure. So x minus 2 times a n minus 1, actually 2 times 236 equals 472. 242 minus 472 is equal to negative 230, which we don't have to add to, but we are running out of space, so B2 will be moved, and XW is performed next, and it's equal to 3,116 minus negative, oops, do not mean to change the language there, so we need to do 3 times 116 minus negative 230 minus a n minus 1, which is going to be, which in this case is going to be a1 because we're at b2 now. So a1 is equal to 244, and this is plus 230 now because of double negative, and this is going to be 348. 348 plus 230 minus 244 is just going to be minus 14, which is going to be 334. And now we have B3. This is supposed to be B4. Sorry about that. So now we are going to B3, in which case, where we have a double rotation. So we are going to go into this section. There will always be two axes that are unchanged. That says if these axes are both x, y, or z, then apply function x. If they're both w, v, or u, then apply function z. So in this case, in our double rotation, we have xw at zv, which means that we know the axes that are not changed are u and y. Now these go across the two sections, so we're applying function y. But we're applying function y in stage 2, so this b3 is equal to 2 times an minus 1, which is 82, so 2 times 82, which is 123, and we're going to subtract each of these rotations. These rotations are referred to as r and s. It does not matter which one you assign it to, the module takes care of that for you. So we're going to do xw and minus zv, and both of these are applied to bn minus 1 or b2, which is going to be our normal input, so we do not have to worry about like using a values for these two functions in this case. So now we go back into this section, we go to xw, and we know that xw is equal to 3 times 116, we've already seen this before, minus 334, and then also minus an minus 1, which now is going to be a2, which is 123. So, and we know that this is 348, minus 334 is going to be 14. 14 minus 123 is just negative of 123 minus 14, which is going to be negative 109. And subtracting 109 is equal to adding 109. Subtracting negative 109 is equal to adding 109. Sorry about that. ZV is going to be, I put square brackets for functions that are subtracted because well, the reason will become clearer, but it is also for notational purposes. So x, we have 334 plus x minus x mod 2. So x minus x, so in fact this whole expression is the floor function, which is x divided by 2, and then taking the integer that is just that is the greatest integer that is smaller than it. But you can also think of it as just x minus x mod 2 over 2, which is going to be, well, x mod 2 is going to be 334 mod 2, which is equal to 0. So 334 minus 0 is just 334. 334 divided by 2 is going to be 167. 334 plus 167, because that's half of 334. And then minus a and minus 1, which is going to be, because we're working with b3 right now, a and minus 1 is a2 again, so 123. And if we have this, then we have 334 plus 167 is equal to 100, 501. And then minus 123 is going to be 500 minus 122, which is going to be 378. and this is positive. But so the main reason why I put these in square brackets is because once I have only one number left, meaning I've applied the entirety of the rotational operation and simplified it. If I have a number that is greater than 364 or less than negative 364, as in this section, then we have to subtract or add 365. This is reminiscent of Simon Stores, but yeah, this is what must be done. And so 378 is greater than 364, so we must subtract 365, which is going to equal to 13. And now we go back to simplify. 2 times 123 is 246. 246 plus 109 is going to be 355. Sorry about that. And then minus 13 is going to be 342. B4. Now we're going to B4, which is the triple rotation. So we need to go into the triple rotation section. Now, triple rotations, it states that if each of the three rotations map an axis from one of xyz to one of u, v, w, or vice versa, applies function w. So that means that if every single rotation only uses one axis from this set and one axis from this set, then we apply function w. Otherwise, apply function v. That's what I mean. It does not mean that it has to be xu, yv, or zw, or something along those lines. No, it can be xu and vy, or xv and yu. Doesn't matter. As long as it does not use two from of the same set, then you're fine. However, in this case, we see that we have xz as one rotation, which means we're using two from this set, which means that we are going to apply function v because this condition is not true. Applying function v on stage 2 is going to be 3 times bn minus 1, which is 342, minus xz minus vw minus yu. And we see that all of them are inputting 342 because that's bn minus 1, so we do not worry about past a values in this case, or yeah. So 3 times 342, we will worry about that in a bit, but xz on stage 2 is equal to 2 times 342 minus an minus 1. B4, we're working at B4 now, so we're using A3, which is equal to 150. Now 2 times 342 is going to be 684. Minus 150 is equal to 534. And 534 is more than 364, so we are going to be subtracting 365, which is going to come out to 169. Nice, kind of. And we know that's positive, so we do not, we just directly subtract that as stated in here. We do not have any absolute values or anything like that, so yeah. So now we apply VW of stage 2. Now VW is equal to 8x plus 5d minus 3n minus 1. So replacing this with square brackets, we have 8 times x, 342, plus 5 times 116, which is d, minus 3 times an minus 1. An minus 1 is again a3, which is 150. So we know that 3 times 150 is 450. 5 times 116 is going to be 580. And you can always do these with the calculator. 8 times 342, that's actually what I'm going to do with the calculator, in fact. 8 times 342 is going to be 2,736. And I will do that with a calculator as well, just because I have it pulled up already. Plus 580 minus 450 is equal to 2,866. This is clearly over 364, so we will repeatedly subtract 365 till we get to an acceptable point. And the number we end up with is 311, which we can, so now we can remove the square brackets. And then lastly, we need to apply yu. Now we're going to here, and then the rotation is yu, which we can find here. And it's going to be 2x minus 365 plus absolute value of an minus 1. So we'll go through that. 2 times 342, sorry. 2 times 342 minus 365 plus absolute value, which is noted by bars of a n minus 1, which is 150. Now 150 is already positive, so we just remove the absolute value. And 2 times 342 is 684. Minus 365 plus 150 is just equal to minus 215. And 684 minus 215 is going to be 469. Yes, 469. Kind of nice, kind of not. And we know that that's positive. Well, actually, we need to subtract 365 from that. So 469 minus 365 is going to be 104. And so we can remove the square brackets now. 3 times 342. Well, I'm going to do that with a calculator. Is going to be equal to 1026. And 1026 minus 169 minus 311 minus 104 is equal to 442. But we still have to simplify that because we need to subtract 365 from that, and that's going to equal to 77. So 77 is the new number that we need to do. And again, using this list, I will not copy it down again this time. We see that 77 is incredibly close to 81, so we start with 81. We see that 81 is 4 away from 77, which we can just do minus 3 minus 1 4. So yeah, that's how that's 77's expression in balanced ternary, kind of. So 1 and 3 I will subtract it, so negative. 9 and 27 are irrelevant. 81 is added, positive. 243 is irrelevant. So now we can go into the submission area of the module. And we can go through these conditions once again. Yeah, that's why this module is kind of long. Yeah, kind of. And I hope that you remember how to do these. I am going through them quickly and silently because this tutorial has gone on for way too long anyways. So yeah, stage 2, we start with YBM GRC. Swap each color with its diametric opposite. So Y becomes blue, blue becomes yellow, magenta becomes green, green becomes magenta, red becomes cyan, cyan becomes red. Swap it red. Let's see, just to make sure. Okay, red button's opposite side. RC, GMBY, RC, C, RC, GM, B, Y, swap R and Y. Swap first and last colors in the sequence. To swap the colors of the top and bottom module buttons, which is magenta and green. Right, so this is our submission sequence. We see negative initially, cyan, blue, white, yellow, and we're on the third stage. The third stage, I will be going, well, not completely silently, but I won't be talking as much because this tutorial has gone on for long. I just wanted to get it over with. But yeah, I hope that I have explained all the relevant parts of the module. If not, please feel free to comment at the bottom. Remember to like and subscribe. I will probably be making more tutorials in the future. Hopefully, at least I don't get kicked from the KTANE community or something. And thank you for watching. And if you want to go through the third stage, I will be writing answers as this goes along. So yeah. So this is actually, a rare case where you have two rotations, then two rotations. You see these two pairs, and so yeah, that's pretty cool, I think. And I am going to give myself some more space. I can always scroll up if I need to use these past values. Feel free to write them down, especially D, A0, A1, A2, A3, as well as B0, B1, B2, and B3, and B4 in order to make the same calculations if you want to practice. Oh, and a note, so you see that it is an minus 1 here, and we are on C5, which means that n minus 1 is equal to 4. Now A4 we do not have, so we have to use this note here, A4 is equal to 0. And as another note, in this case, green and magenta do only have one button between them. This does not include the green or magenta buttons themselves. There's only cyan between them, which is why the condition applies. Also, the north and south buttons do not count on either the left or the right, which is why the blue button rule does not apply, and the blue and yellow on the same side of the module also does not apply. And so we do have the cycle each color in clockwise order of the colors of the module rule in this case. So we'll be applying that. Magenta goes to yellow, that is the next one. Cyan goes to magenta. Red goes to blue because skipping white and black. Yellow goes to red. Green goes to cyan. And blue goes to green. Cycle both primary and secondary. So what this rule means, cycle both primary and secondary, means apply both of these. So right. Well, fuck. Actually, you know what? I'll just try to check for some mistakes. And I'm sure that some of you may have already seen what's wrong. But yeah. I just don't want to retake this is all. I'm gonna pause the recording for a second while I figure it out. Be right back. So yeah, that is going to be my final answer. Let's hope it works. Okay, I misclicked. I need to go through this whole color order again, I suppose. But so yep, there are a lot of mistakes in this module. Yeah. And so let's hope I can actually submit things this time. That's so yeah. UltraStores is a pretty error-prone module. I apologize for the 2 strikes that I got. One of them is a completely dumb mistake. The other one is a math mistake. But yeah, mistakes happen on such a hard module, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that it actually helped at least some of you learn this module, and see you in the next one.